Välkomna till kvällens sista presentation. Jag heter Anders Haskel och jag kommer att ställa frågor efter presentationen. Denna presentationen kommer för övrigt att hållas på engelska. This presentation, the last for the evening, will be held in English. The company is Cyxone and the company will be presented by Tara Heitner, CEO. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm here to present Cyxone and wrong button. I'll try to keep it light and focus on the highlights because I know it's late and everybody wants to get to bed soon. This is a dashboard, and if I have time later in the talk, I'll go through this in more detail, give you some of the details about the company. So Cyxone, who are we and what do we do? We're a company focusing on disorders of the immune system. Now, your immune system is normally your first line of defense against invading pathogens and also cancer cells. But in autoimmune disease and in disorders of the immune system, things go wrong. Your immune cells somehow recognize your own healthy tissues as foreign and start attacking and destroying them. So Cyxone is focused on delivering first-in-class drugs that can really make a meaningful impact for patients by focusing on drugs with novel modes of action. So this would mean drugs which are more competitive in the market to bring more value to our shareholders, drugs that are easier to administer or to take with improved safety over drugs as a current standard of care. So we want to make an impact for patients as well as healthcare systems. We have 3 programs in our pipeline. Rebexamod is our lead compound, which we're developing for RA and for COVID. Last year, we pivoted and deployed Rebexamod for COVID because of the pandemic and because we really believe the mode of action is quite relevant for the disease pathogens in COVID-19. We also have an earlier stage program, which is very exciting for MS, T20K, and I'll give you an update on that as well. We're a clinical stage company. Rebexamod is in phase 2 trials. We recently started a trial for COVID-19 in December, and we dosed our first patients already here in January. Our business model is to take these to proof of concept or to partner in a phase 2 or after phase 2 with strategic partners that can help us with later stage development, market access, and commercialization. But let me take you a little bit to the front line to understand what our patients are dealing with. So this is an anecdote about Karen. She loves gardening, but she can't actually enjoy her pastime. Since 8 years ago, she was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. She had pain in her shoulders, pain in her hands, in her knees and feet, debilitating pain, wincing pain, tender to the touch. Her doctor at that time prescribed the standard of care methotrexate and steroids. Nothing really helped. She was very frustrated, often depressed and angry. But eventually she got access to an IL-6 inhibitor trial, and she was in this trial for 4 years. And with this IL-6 inhibitor, there was an improvement. But eventually, when the trial ended, she was taken off and her terrible symptoms returned. So then her doctor started her on JAK inhibitors, and this had a real impact for her. She felt like she was a new person. She told her doctor, I feel like a completely new person. So he asked her, does this mean that your knees can move now and you have no pain? And she answered him, it's not that they can move and it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt, but everything doesn't hurt as much. So I hope this gives you an idea of where we are in terms of meeting an unmet need, and we're not there yet. There's still patients are suffering, and patients like Karen eventually escalate to very complex treatment regimes that are difficult to adhere to and that also have terrible side effects over time. So that's why we're working on alternative therapies. Now, in rheumatoid arthritis, the joint destruction is caused by a subset of immune cells called infiltrating inflammatory macrophages. And these are normally friendly and protecting us against infection. But in the case of autoimmune disease, these macrophages become hostile or inflammatory. They infiltrate the synovial fluid. They recognize the tissue as a foreign object and this triggers them to release cytokines. The cytokines recruit more immune cells, and this leads to destruction of the joint, the cartilage, and the bone, and lots of pain as well. So Rebexamod has a unique mode of action, which represents a brand new tool for rheumatologists and a mode of action that isn't represented by any of the other drugs that are on the market. Rebexamod very selectively recognizes this subpopulation of macrophages and can change them from a inflammatory to a non-inflammatory subtype. And if we get to patients early enough, you can imagine we can prevent altogether damage to their joints or delay it at least as long as possible. So we envision that in the future, if we can successfully develop Rebexamod, we'll be able to extend a very easy treatment for rheumatoid arthritis patients, an oral treatment, long before they will need escalation to other types of drugs, if at all. So we want to delay the need for escalation and simplify treatment to allow patients to stay disease-free. Finally, today there was also news that JAK inhibitors are wonderful drugs that deliver efficacy, but the safety profile isn't what we need and what patients can accept often. So this is another area where Rebexamod hopefully can be an improvement over that standard of care. So right now we're in the process of redesigning our phase 2 trial. And we're redesigning it so that we can be more competitive, not in the market today, but in the market that we'll enter into in 4 or 5 years. And we want to narrow our focus on patients who will benefit the most from mechanisms of action, the mechanism of action on inflammatory macrophages. And so we're actually in discussions with rheumatologists to really figure out who those patients are and how to identify them. Some of the milestones that we will reach this year are the final report for the 6-month tox study will be available in January or Q1. We don't expect anything different from what we got in the draft report. And we will, at the end of Q1, announce the new study design. We will have start of activities during the year. And if everything goes well and the pandemic is under control, we'll start the trial at the end of 2022. It'll probably be approximately 2 years before we have the readout from that trial, but there's possibility we might have interim results. So to review what we've achieved this year for Rebexamod, it's been a very productive year. We have filed 5 new patents in 2020. The original patent for Rebexamod was going to expire in 2025. And so in order to increase the value in the company and the value in the asset, it was important to extend this. And we did this in many different ways. We filed an IND in 2020 after meeting with the FDA, and there have been no further comments. So I know there's been a lot of questions about the IND. According to the regulatory, we have an IND based on this no further comments. And that means that we have the opportunity to run trials in the US, open up for patent extension, market and commercialize in the US for any indication for Rebexamod. We've also made a stockpile of GMP quality API. So we've invested in that already, and that's available for future studies. We have capsules ready for phase 2 trials in both the COVID and the RA trial. So that's also an investment that has already been made. As you know, the 6-month study was completed without any adverse effects. The COVID trial was also initiated in December. So all in all, a very productive year. And I just want to remind everybody, this is an oral drug with a unique mode of action. Durability has been demonstrated in the clinic. Efficacy has been shown in animal models, in patients. and safety in phase 1 and phase 2A, and then the tox study. The RA market is, of course, very respectable. We see a trend of decreasing reliance on the biologicals, but these are being replaced by Me Too biologicals or biosimilars. But you see an increase in the kinase inhibitors, which would be the JAK inhibitors projected for 2029. But I think that our drug would have a whole new piece of pie because is not represented by any of the classes of molecules here. And I think we have the opportunity, therefore, to really have a market potential of, in conservative estimate would be $5 billion at peak, based on taking some of the biological market as well as the kinase inhibitor market. So again, our business model is to seek a strategic partner with the right capabilities and distribution channels to allow us to develop later phase clinical trials and to market and commercialize. Now, COVID-19, I think we are all aware of the urgency here. We saw what happened in Italy. We see what's happening all around the world, of course, in Sweden and in Canada, where I'm from, and in California, where I lived. It's out of control. And even with the advent of vaccines, they will always need therapies. It's also important to note that Rebexmod is not only going to be useful against COVID-19, but against any viral infection of the lung that is caused by a macrophage, infiltrating macrophage mode of action. There's been papers recently written which outline the critical need for therapies for early COVID-19 patients, treatment strategies incorporating the blockade of differentiation monocyte macrophages have been proposed by other independent researchers as being potentially disease altering. And since Rebexmod is safe and it's oral, in the future, it could potentially be used as an outpatient treatment for COVID-19 or any viral infection of the lung. So just to illustrate why we believe Rebexmod will be relevant as well, is once you get viral infection of the lung, the macrophage gets activated, and this is what you want to happen. But in cases of COVID-19 patients, you get overactivation, and you get a cytokine storm in the lung, which can lead to acute respiratory dysfunction, bacterial infection, and sepsis can ensue, which then leads to organ failure, and patients can perish. So there is a highlighted need for treatments to prevent the progression to the acute stage, and that's where Rebexmod can bring value. It targets the activated macrophage and reverts it to a non-inflammatory phenotype, avoiding the complications in the lung, decreasing inflammation in the lung, decreasing lung edema, and improving oxygenation. So our clinical development and our clinical trial, which is in progress right now, includes 300 patients, or will include 300 patients with moderate COVID-19. The idea is we want to get patients before they become severe or acute to take the burden off of the hospital and to prevent them needing oxygen or respirators. The primary endpoint is survival and time to response after an oral 14-day treatment with 60-day follow-up. This is the outline of our time frame, and as you can see, we have initiated this study. We got the first approval in Q4, first patient in January, and the study readout, if everything goes well, will be in Q3, end of Q3. There's the opportunity, if this is successful, to apply for emergency use authorization and if there's also the possibility that we might need to do additional trials afterwards, in which case we would seek a partnership. In terms of the competition, there are a lot of immunomodulatory drugs in clinical trials right now, but many of these are focusing on the more severe patients. So we have kind of a unique place in the competitive landscape. And many of these are IL-6 inhibitors or TNF-alpha inhibitor mimics. And so we really have a unique mode of action compared to all the other immunomodulatory drugs which are being developed for COVID-19. Finally, I just want to give a brief update about our progress with T20K. Now, MS is a disease where the immune system starts to attack the myelin sheath on neuron cells, so in the brain and in the spinal cord. And this is bad because the brain is the supercomputer that controls the body, and the spinal cord is the superhighway that takes all the information back and forth. So when you have this attack on the myelin sheath, then you interrupt the transport of information across the neuron and from one neuron to the next. You get incomplete transmission. And this can lead to a very varied symptoms like cognitive function, tingling, dizziness, etc. There are about 2.5 million patients worldwide. Most are cases of relapsing, remitting, and it hits people in the prime of their life. It affects men and women, with a predominance of women. And current therapies, unfortunately, lead to safety and tolerability problems. And actually, most of the therapies for MS require a lot of monitoring, a lot of testing to decide if it's safe enough for patients to take. So there's a very high unmet need. This is just an example of some of the side effects you might see with one of the newer drugs for MS. So I hope you understand there is need for improvement also, despite the fact that there are treatments available. T20K is a peptide drug, very stable, that decreases IL-2. And IL-2 is a cytokine that helps the immune cells to recruit more immune cells. Once they recognize the myelin, it gives a signal to excrete more IL-2, to make more IL-2 receptor, and to undergo clonal expansion. So you have an army of cells that can attack. But if you actually inhibit this, which is what T20K does, then you can slow down the disease, prevent the progression altogether. So we're looking for long-lasting efficacy and convenient administration form. This drug right now has patent protection to 2035. This is our what we're working on right now. We're focusing on development of convenient administration routes, biomarkers. We've hired 2 R&D experts into the company in 2020 to support the project, and we hope to have updates later on in the year. This is a market also with a 30 billion estimation in 2028. And you see a great shift from non-MAB injectable therapies to MAB injectable therapies, but you also see the oral therapies increasing a lot in the projected market. So this is a very dynamic market, and one where if you have something that's efficacious and safe, you're going to be able to capture a lot of the market. Finally, I just want to introduce the team. This wouldn't be possible at all without the really amazing team that has been delivering. I have my colleagues Malin and Ola, Sally and Kristen, and our excellent scientific advisory board. And great support also from our board of directors. So this is the dashboard I mentioned earlier. And I just wanted to say that we are in a good cash position. We've raised in total over 200 million Swedish kronor since inception. We had warrants that will expire in May, and with these we have the opportunity to raise additional 42 million Swedish kronor maximum. Today the share price was 0.43 euros. So in the upcoming year, we expect to move forward with preclinical studies on T20K, including API efforts. We expect to announce our study plan. We expect to start activities and trial initiation at the end of the year. We hope to have the COVID-19 study readout at the end of Q3. The patents will be public at the end of Q4. And we have the ambition to change to the main list and prepare for that. We're preparing for that now in the beginning of next year. And finally, we have started talking to potential partners about partnering on Rebexamod. And with that, I'll say good night and thank you. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Tara. I will try to ask some questions, and I think I will start with a question about your partner strategy. Tell us a little more. You told us about it in your presentation, but if possible, tell us a little more about your partner strategy. Maybe it's differ between the different products, but a little more in deep. How do you work to find the partners and so on?
Mainly, I use my network and the network of the members of our board and my colleagues. We also have been attending a lot of partner conferences, such as JP Morgan and BioEurope and BioEurope Spring will be attending. And here it gives us a chance to catch up with a lot of the people we have discussions with. So I think that everyone's done an excellent job, even though everything is online these days, in meeting and being very productive and adapting really well to the situation with COVID-19. So my schedule has been quite full, actually, even though we're not able to meet face-to-face.
You're working in areas with very big market potential, and where do you see the highest possibility to success? If you can rank it.
Yeah, I mean, I think really we're putting a lot of effort into the RA. I think the COVID is a unique opportunity as well because of the current situation, and I think that people are, and of course, efficacy is going to be key, and there will be already an immediate need for a drug this year if we show efficacy in the trial. So I think the trick will be on how to find a partner that's interested in both indications, and if not, how we could separate the indications. And so I see Rebexamod as our lead compound right now. It's most further along, and I think it's extremely interesting mode of action because there's not many drugs that have that type of mode of action that are being developed at the moment.
Okay, thank you. I have a question from the audience. I didn't know about it, but the question is when can you tell us more about your office in Basel in Switzerland? Is there any activity going on there at the moment?
No, actually, we have an address there. We have a subsidiary in Switzerland, but we actually aren't taking advantage of it that much because since I joined the company, it's been COVID and it's been lockdown and very little traveling. So unfortunately, we haven't used that. But I have been starting to reach out to partners and investors also in Switzerland and outside of Sweden. And hopefully having that subsidiary can help us to attract investors and partners that are in other geographic regions.
Are you all based here in southern Sweden, in Malmö for the moment, or are you spread in different places?
We have
maybe it doesn't matter, but yeah.
A few of us are up in Stockholm, some are in Helsingborg, some of us are in Copenhagen. That's me.
Okay.
And a few in Malmö. And Malin, she lives on an island somewhere out it's more beautiful, but it takes her a while to get in, and several airplanes. That's what I know. So we're a very virtual team. We run very lean, but our ambition is to grow organically. Our ambition is to be able to, right now with the kind of organization we have, we can move a project forward. The team is extremely talented, but to take on multiple phase 2 clinical programs at the same time will require a much bigger team.
Some speakers here today have mentioned the problems in the COVID-19 situation and problems with clinical trials. It's harder to yes. How do you feel it? Maybe your COVID-19 project isn't affected in that way, but the other projects.
Well, luckily we made the decision to postpone the RA trial, and at the time we did it to better position the drug in the market, and that was the reason, to give us time to design a more clever trial. But I think it was kind of lucky because according to some of the rheumatologists we're speaking to now, it's very difficult to run a RA trial, for example, in UK and potentially even in Eastern Europe where we were planning to run it, just because of the crisis. I mean, the hospitals are understaffed. The patients, the acute patients are out too many, and they're running out of capacity. So I actually think it's a good time for us to have postponed a trial. And the COVID trial, you would think that it's very easy to run because there's so many patients now. Yes, and we are getting a lot of patients, but because of the pandemic, the moderate patients are actually being sent home a lot of the time. And we can get access to moderate patients, and we are, because the clinicians are very interested in getting tools. They feel extremely impotent in terms of serving and being able to help their patients. And so our ability to run the trial is because the doctors are desperately wanting tools that can help. But indeed, there are a lot of severe patients in the hospitals right now.
One of my last questions is about your finances and the liquidity situation. For how long do you have liquidity for your plans?
Right now, our budget will keep us going if we do all the activities we have planned until the end of the year.
Okay. And my last question. What do you see as your most important priority for the coming 6 months?
Well, the COVID trial, we want to make sure that is done successfully and we don't hit any roadblocks. So we have to make sure to stay a few steps ahead and be able to preempt any potential slowdowns. The second thing is to make sure the RA trial planning goes ahead so that when the pandemic is over, hopefully soon, in the end of the summer, we'll be at a position where we can jump and start our RA trial.
Okay. Thank you very much for interesting presentation, and I wish you good luck.